What is going on, guys? My name is Barnard, and welcome back to the Pix 5 Media YouTube channel. I'll be back with a more in-depth breakdown and podcast later this week on the whole James Harden situation and just the current events of the Sixers organization. But I did want to dive in today and just give my thoughts on the initial report and the immediate report of the Clippers ending trade talks with James Harden. So we know that there was a lot of conversation about this, and just to pull it up on the screen here, we have the headline that the NBA insider reveals Clippers shut down James Harden trade talks. This is on SportsIllustrated.com here, and the expert in question is, of course, Brian Windhorst, who has quietly become a king of the NBA reporting world. And the quote specifically that some of the aggregation has not got fully on top of, so I want to make sure we get it in full here, is, quote, the Clippers tried to trade for James Harden, and that deal didn't happen. And from what I understand, it was the Clippers who said, okay, there's no deal here. We're going to move on. While I assume that they could certainly make a deal midseason, I assume this is what they're going to go with. So this is an unfortunate reality for the Sixers is, as we have kind of been at a standstill for the James Harden talks and the Dame Lillard talks across the NBA, it's kind of been a staring contest across teams. The problem from the Sixers' perspective is there is no real other option as far as driving the market for James Harden. Now, whenever there is a stalemate when it comes to a negotiation in trade, specifically over a star, is the either the two things that either need to prevail here, or you want that player that bad, or it's not worth it to go up these assets. The market for James Harden is as low as it's ever been. That is just pure fact. That when you look around at what he commanded from a contract standpoint, of him opting into the 35 million was essentially the only way to assure they would get near his what he perceives as his market price. And frankly, that's over what he would have gotten on the open market this year. And I think that's pretty clear based on these circumstances, because it takes another team to be interested. It felt like it was the Sixers or bust from a contract standpoint. And now the Sixers, there is the conversation between him and Harden of him opting in, but not wanting to be back. So it's a notable issue here. And now, is James Harden going to stand out there and call out the Clippers GM and call him a liar for not wanting to come through with the trade now? I don't know. It's on the table. Could be anything with this guy at this point. But for the time being, it is not good news for the Sixers that they don't have another competitor in the negotiation of drumming up the Harden price. That the Clippers offer is essentially the Clippers offer. And that as much as they do seem to genuinely want James Harden, as much as I do think it makes sense from a basketball perspective to add him to a mix with Kawhi Leonard and with Paul George, where Harden can have his nights where he does step to center stage and have his 40-point performance. And he also has his nights where he simply doesn't have it, which we do see. And he can defer to those guys, allow them to take the reins. I do see it making sense. I also think it makes a ton of sense from a headline standpoint that we know Steve Ballmer is invested in putting butts in the seats, that they have new arena opening and they need as many headlines, as many notable storylines as they can to make sure they are loading that thing up. As great as the Clippers have progressed in recent years, they're still trying to make sure that they are their own entity and outside of the Los Angeles Lakers, that they're not the little brother in LA, as has been the case for many years. So as much as they're looking to break that mold, they still can't mortgage the future by giving up more than what they perceive as the market value for James Harden. And whether that is being held up on Terrence Mann or a number of picks, who knows, maybe Bones Highland or whatever the deal breaker is from the Clippers perspective, we're kind of at a standstill, because the point that is either going to come one way or another here is you want James Harden that bad or you don't. And that's kind of the issue, is it seems like a lot of people don't. Because the reason that there is a market and the reason that there is this standard or this translation for what a player is worth is because there's a finite number of those players. There is a limited number of players that can get you 20 and 10 in the same way that James Harden it can. And for all the downsides, for all the criticism that you can have of Harden, he still is a high-level playmaker, still a guy capable of catching fire, and still for sure one of the 40 best basketball players in the world. As much as he has his downfalls, he has his bad performances, and when we see them often, the Sixers can't afford to just give up a player like that without at least opening the window for a better situation. There's been a lot of talk about the salary cap plan, where you clear cap space plan is what I was looking for, um, and attack the 2024 free agent class. I'm not the biggest component of this from the standpoint of it takes a star wanting to come to Philadelphia in that situation. And we really just have not seen stars change hands through free agency in recent years. It's all been via trade. And a lot of that is because of these CBA issues, which Adam Silver is bringing up and causing a huge think about. So we'll see where it lands. But the end result of these standards are players are signing these lucrative deals with franchise where they're rewarded for staying with their loyal franchise, and then forcing a trade shortly after. So it's a little bit of having your cake and eating it too. There is a double standard there. I think that is an issue that is working to be fixed. But for the moment, that's the situation. And it is the situation with James Harden that he did take that player option. He did accept that $35 million. He now doesn't want to be with the Sixers. And we're going to find out how serious he is about that. He's put it well on record of making it clear. He's made his comments about Daryl Morey. He's stood in front and center and let us all know about it. But how far are you willing to push that? Are you willing to cause such a big stink in training camp to where there's just no point in keeping you around, where you're that much of a detriment to an organization that they just have to get rid of you and sell you for 50 cents on the dollar? As much as I think that's very much a possibility, and I honestly lean toward that being the more likely case, that also effectively is the end of James Harden as we know it. That there will never be a situation where he touches near max money. I think he will be closer. If James Harden causes a stink, flames out of these Sixers, and forces a trade in a way where he is out of shape, not trying, and causing a whole scene, he will be closer to a minimum contract player than he will for a maximum contract player for the rest of his career. I don't see a world where he signs a contract north of 15 to 20 million at this point in time. I just don't see a team that values him in the way because he is such a unique player. He is such a niche style play. And you have to have the right ingredients around him for it to work. And for a lot of teams, he makes zero sense. He's one of the most ball dominant players of all time, that the only time he's ever truly locked in on a basketball court is if he has the ball in his hands. He's not effective as a floor spacer without it. He's not a guy that plays defense hard. He's vulnerable on both sides of the floor. He stands still when he does not have the ball. He does not move off ball. There's a lot of issues. And this is not to say that he isn't good, that there's plenty of things that he's excellent. I would put him well within the top 3 passers in the NBA still at this point, and his basketball IQ is off the charts as far as the way he reads the game, the way he's able to process things. But there's also the negatives, and that is seen by everybody. That we've now seen this in Houston, we've seen this in Brooklyn, and we're now seeing it in Philly. That when that happens, those things stick. So this certainly does not help his market. That certainly doesn't motivate the Clippers to want to go out and trade him. And as much as you can get a honeymoon period of James Harden, I can't sit up here confidently and sell James Harden as the missing piece in the championship roster because I just don't think that's the case. So as much as we want to complain, hope a Clippers deal happens, if they are truly out on this guy, I don't know what the future is for James Harden, but it's looking more and more likely like it's going to have something to do with the Sixers. So unfortunately, we seem headed for this frustrating ending that it is going to murk into the season, that we're going to see this be an issue and stand up. And ultimately, I guess it's going to be a staring contest between how serious James Harden is on forcing his way out and how much he wants to take the sensible approach and keep his career open as much as possible. For now, we'll wait. As I mentioned, I will be back later this week with a more in-depth breakdown, working on landing a special guest, a friend of the podcast that's been on a couple times now. So stay posted for that, and I will talk with you then. Peace.